Excuse me, ma'am. Can I go next?
Yes, you can.
I have some issue.
You can start. Vinita? Vinita?
Ma'am, can I go next?
Pardon?
Can I go next? I need 5 minutes. I have some issues.
Okay,
Okay, fine,
no
fine.
problem. Akshita Nadar,
Akshita Nadar is not here, sir. I think we can
Priya
start with
Tripathi.
Lakshmi Gupta.
Yeah.
Lakshmi? Lakshmi Gupta?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Are you
Okay.
ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
you can do your presentation.
Okay.
Species concept.
Okay. Hello, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, it is
Yes,
visible.
yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lakshmi Gupta from MSc Botany Department, and I'll be presenting the topic Species Concept and Speciation Analysis, written by Joel Crackcraft. Species concept. First is biological species concept. Biological species concept, as given by Mayer in the year 1969, states that species are groups of interbreeding natural population that are reproductively isolated from other such groups. Where whether sympatric or parapatric species shows presence or absence of reproductive isolation is determined unambiguously, and for allopatric groups, the BSC, that is, biological species concept, is evaluated in terms whether the individual can interbreed when they came in contact. In recent years, many biologists considered this assessment to be inadequate while dealing with the practical problem of describing Earth's biota. Thus, the phylogenetic species concept arose not only to facilitate our understanding of taxonomic differentiation but also as an attempt to overcome classificatory problems like to apply name to every variations with local population. Our biological species unit of evolution. Theory of evolution are the theories about the descent and modification of entity which is known as species. Biological species concept implies that origin of reproductive isolation is the most important component of taxonomic diversity. However, if reproductive isolation is not the central issue of taxonomic differentiation, then logically the speciation concept based on isolation theory may not be necessary. It does not imply that reproductive isolation is insignificant, but just its role is over exaggerated. According to Joel Crackcraft, systematic status of group primarily depends upon differentiation and secondarily upon interbreeding. Naturally, the characters have not to be morphologically, but it can include any intrinsic attribute, whether biochemical, physiological, or behavioral. Thus, BSC cannot logically constitute the lowest level of taxonomic unit of evolution. A proposed species concept of ornithology. This section will pursue the problem of formulating species concept compatible for two primary aims, that is, taxonomic recognition, description, and historical analysis of all the potential evolutionary units, and second is expression of information about context to Linnaean hierarchical classification. Phylogenetic species concept. According to Joel Crackcraft, the basic unit of evolution of population is characterized by one or more evolutionary novelties. Evolution produces taxonomic entities, which can be termed as species, but now it is defined as the smallest diagnosable cluster of individual organisms within which there is parental pattern of ancestry and descent. Now, species can be defined in terms of diagnostic characters and taxonomic status. Advantages of phylogenetic species concept and biological species concept are two major questions of speciation analysis, that are unit of evolution and what are the relationship between them, are now not restricted to a subjective approach to a taxonomic ranking. It clarifies the difference between recognizing species taxa and analysis of geographic variations. Phylogenetic species concept clarifies the status and systematic rule of subspecies, that subspecies cannot have ontological status as evolutionary units under phylogenetic species concept, as it does not represent taxa having independent ontological status. This places a new interpretation on reproductive isolation theory. PSC directs more attention to geographical history of speciation than does by BSc. In summary, the PSC would be beneficial to ornithology because it places emphasis on description and recognition of evolutionary unit taxa. Speciation analysis. Speciation is how new species is created. It was initially based on BSc. Joel Cracraft believed that adoption of BSc, that is biological species concept, have been an impediment on the speciation analysis. Thus, it should be re-examined. Thus, Joel Cracraft derived four established observations, that are organisms can be clustered into diagnosable taxonomic units, which can be called as species. Species have hierarchical relationship with one another. Each species is endemic to an area. An area of endemism are often seen to be congruent from one group to another. Taxonomic difference appears to be a spatial phenomena, that is, all the taxa arises in a restricted area and geographical region. Two ways to approach speciation is either by ignoring the congruence, where focus is only on the one group, or by investigating the area of congruency. Congruence area is where two or more species are endemic. How are area of endemism determined? Area of endemism are hypotheses about area with two or more endemic species. Many birds exhibit long-distance seasonal migration. What is their area of endemism? The breeding area or the non-breeding area? The breeding area ranges seems to be more important because the breeding area exhibit a marked degree of congruency. Example for this is area of endemism for birds of northern and eastern Australia and New Guinea. A number of well-defined area of endemism can be seen, which is seen in this diagram. The area of endemism of northern and eastern Australia are all defined by ecological barriers. General area cladogram. Here is the phylogenetic hypothesis with species endemic in three or more areas. Two parental species of wren's bird of genus Malurus, which is the female, one is the female with blue colored back, and the male, which is almost blue or lavender in color. All the three later derived species, which is Rossergi in females, lores and feathers near the eyes, which are white in color, dulces in female, lores and feathers near eyes, which is chestnut like in color, and the anabilis, it is male without lavender patch. They all are found in different parts of country. This means that there was not just reproductive isolation theory acting on it, but other intrinsic roles also play the most important part of speciation. All the derived species has gone through certain genotypic and phenotypic variations to become compatible to the new environment. So, Joel Krakav concluded it like the theory suggested that one cannot expect to reconstruct are made with other historical pattern. The assumption that age is correlated with degree of differentiation should be abundant. Comparative study are also necessary if we want to compare rates of differentiation one from group to another. That's all for this topic. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, yes, very nice.
Thank you. Very nice.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, any questions for her?
No, ma'am.
So, Lakshmi, can you tell me, is there any, the current understanding of the speciation, is there any difference between which you found by Joel Kraftkera and today's understanding of speciation? Has been there any addition to it, or is it the same what he had speculated about?
Okay, the speciation which we are studying are mostly dependent on reproductive isolation. According to scientists who all believe on reproductive isolation, their observation says that all the organisms are majorly divided from each other because of mutation that takes place in it. But Joel Krakav used to believe that it was not only the reproductive isolation, but many
Hmm.
various other phenomenons also act on it. It may be genotype, which many other act on it. It may be dependent on various other region. It is not only the reproductive isolation. Maybe the species which is which is interbreeding. No, maybe the species which uh, uh,
Interbreeding will occur between the individuals of reproductive isolation.
it depends. It depends on the species whether they can interbreed or not.
Okay.
Yeah, the breeding depends on the whether if the organisms are have different breeding ranges. It depends if both the organism from different breeding ranges, if they are brought together and if they are breeding, it is totally dependent on the species. It is possible that two organisms from different breeding region may breed together or may not.
Okay.
And
Fine.
even if they breed, they won't produce the fertile
They wouldn't.
offsprings.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jyoti. Now we will, sir. Should I take the next
Yes, yes,
participant?
yes.
Rani Mishra.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you will be presenting next.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Rani, now I have made you co-host. You can share your screen with us.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing.
Yes.
Hello, ma'am. My screen is visible?
Yes, yes, it is visible.
Yeah, okay. A pleasant morning to one and all. I, Rani Mishra, am delighted here to talk about the natural system of classification by George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker. So, firstly, I would like to give you a short introduction on it. Okay, so George Bentham and Joseph Dalton Hooker are the two British botanists associated with the Royal Botanical Garden at Kew. And they have published the book that is Genera Plantarum, which is in Latin and from the year 1862 to 1883. And the book is of 3 volumes. As I've specified, the first front page of the book of Genera Plantarum over here, and according to the system of classification, the Genera Plantarum book comprises of 97,205 species and 202 families. And the book was itself completed in 21 years, and we say as it is an important gift from Britain. And whichever plant they have mentioned in the book is the seed-bearing plant, that is Phanerogam angiospermic. And whenever we study about the angiospermic plant, we are mostly referring to the Bentham and Hooker classification system. So therefore, we see as it is widely acceptable. Now moving to next slide. Okay, so now here I have presented in the flowchart manner, that is the outline of the classification system. And in the flowchart manner I have presented because it would be easy to understand. And also I've specified the actual original page. So, okay. The Phanerogam, that is seed-bearing plant, Bentham and Hooker have divided the seed-bearing plant into three classes, that is dicotyledone, one cotyledon, gymnospermae, and monocotyledone, that is two cotyledon. And further, the dicotyledone is divided into three subclasses, that is polypetale, free petal, it means gamopetale means fused petal, and monoclamidae means there is no differentiation between the perianth and the calyx. And these subclasses are divided into particular number of series. Like polypetale has three series, that is Thalamiflorae, Disciflorae, Calciflorae, and we are having particular number of order and the family. And next is Gamopetale. That is as I said, it is a fused flower with a fused petal, and it is divided in a particular series, that is Symphyri, Heteromeri, and Bicarpellite. And these series are also divided, like it has a particular number of orders and the families. And next is subclass of Monoclamidae. That is means it has only one kind of perianth, and it has a 8 series. That is Curviembrae, Multiviolate Aquitice, Multiviolate Territory. Means it is total 8 series with a particular number of families. And next, that is Gymnospermae class, which I have not specified the total classification because it is very short, and only the family, it has only 3 families, that is Cnidaceae, Coniferaceae, and Cycadaceae. Next is Monocotyledone class, means embryo having one cotyledone, and it is further, it is having 7 series, and it is comparison between dicotyledone, it is comparing, it is short than that. And further, here I'm taking the breakdown of monocotyledone, means one kind of perianth. It has total 8 series, and I've specified the name of the family of each series, like Curviembrae, having a particular number of families. And the original page which I've mentioned here is like Bentham and Hooker have mentioned in this page about the monocotyledone, and the series and the particular number of families I've specified here. So overall of this thing, I'm going to highlight on the family of Amaranthaceae, because since it has many huge study, and it has many families, so we'll get an idea that how Bentham and Hooker have described a particular family. So moving to the next slide. Yeah. So this is a family Amaranthaceae. First, I will talk about the systematic position. Like earlier, I have already given an outline classification. So classification division, division, it has spermatophyta, that is seed bearing plant. Subdivision is angiospermae, class Dicotyledone, subclass Petale, series Curviembrae, order Chenopodials, family Amaranthaceae. And down, that is a floral representation of Chenopodium, and this beautiful flower is of Calosia. And the original page, which I've specified here, is written by Bentham and Hooker, and we have mentioned about, this is the first page of Amaranthaceae, which has total which has total characters, all the character, which I will show you in the next slide. Okay, so before showing the character, I will show you about the genus. So genus, in the every family having a particular number of genus, like Amaranthaceae has total 48 genus, which is divided into 3 tribes. Tribe 1 is Calosia, 2 is Amaranthaceae, 3 is Gomphrinae. So this 48 genus is there with the common name and their name, and I have placed it in alphabetical order so that it would be easy to understand, like Acheranthus, chopflower, Alternanthera joyweed, then genus Amaranthus, that is pigweed, Israeli bloodleaf. I have mentioned in alphabetical order. And the side of that original page I have mentioned here, that is written by by Bentham and Hooker, and they have mentioned in this the tribes. Tribe 1, as you all can see, tribe 1 is Calosia, tribe 2 Amaranthaceae, and the third tribe I will show you in the next slide. So moving to the next slide. Yeah. So in this, I will elaborate on the characters. So in this slide, I have given about the original pages on the tribes. The third tribe is mentioned here with the total 48 genus. If you will count, then you will. So now I will talk about the characters. So characters, firstly habit, that is, it is mostly herb, rarely shrub, and annual or perennial. Leaf is simple, alternate or opposite, petiolate. Simple leaf, it is a single leaf that is not divided into smaller leaflet unit. Petiolate means that attachment to the stem by a short stalk. Exstipulate means having no stipules. And unicostate reticulate venation. That means lamina having single veins which extend from its base to the apex. Next is the character of flower. Flower is bracteate, sessile or subsessile, bracteolate. Bracteate means it has a bract, or we can say a small leaf-like structure. Actinomorphic is a type of radial symmetry which is found in starfish like star-shaped structures. Unisexual hypogynous. Hypogynous means a floral part situated below the carpel. Next is the character of inflorescence, like it is axillary or terminal spike. This inflorescence diagram picture I have mentioned down the first picture showing the inflorescence. Terminal spike means a long nail-like structure which is seen in Acheranthus tecara. Perianth, talking about perianth, it is usually 5 tepals. Free or united, sometimes 2 to 3. Dry, membranous, velvet or twisted. Velvet twisted, it is a type of excavation. Velvet means petal or sepal are touching each other, and twisted means they are overlapping. Inferior means it is ovary is inferior. Now talking about androecium, stamen 5 or 3. In the diagram, second diagram picture, the stamen is mentioned over here. For example, amaranthus. Pre or united staminode means the stamen having not stamen do not have anther, but sometimes the anther is present. Intros diathaceous means the anther having two connect type of connective that and monotheous alternanthera. Next is the character of gynaecium. That is bicarpellary means having two carpel, or tricarpellary means having three carpel. Syncarpous, ovary superior. Unilocular means having one type of ovule. Usually one campylotropous. Ovule means ovule is curved shaped. Basal presentation means ovule is attached at the base. Stigma 2 or 3. And stigma may be bifid or trifid. Fruit is dry. In the third picture, I have mentioned about the fruit. It is one seeded, and seed is endospermic, having endosperm floral formula. The first sign mentioned is of actinomorphic, that is radial symmetry. Second sign is of bisexual. P is for perianth. The total number is 3 to 5. A is for androecium. G is for gynaecium. So these all the characters have been mentioned in my first slide of Amaranth ACM. But habit is not, they have, Bentham and Hooker have not mentioned about the habit, and except all the morphological character is mentioned. Next slide. Here I have specified the pictures of the economic importance like Gomphrena globosa, Calosia israini, that is blood leaf, melanocarpon. These are the used for ornamental purpose, decorative purpose. Acheranthus is a medicinal plant. Antilotes, Dingera, the shrubs. So, in this way, George Bentham and Joseph Letton Hooker have given a valuable contribution on describing the particular system, family, genus, subclasses, and that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope the classification was easy to understand. Thank you for your attention and listening. Thank you.
Good one, Rani.
Yes, very good. Nice, Rani.
I just have a
Thank you, ma'am.
couple of questions. Any specific reason you chose Amaranthus?
Yes, sir. I just like this plant. That's
Okay.
why.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Amaranthus belongs to Opetale, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
There is another question. There is one of the very important disadvantage or demerit of this particular classification system of Bentham and Hooker. Can you
Yes, yes.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure, sir. The position of gymnosperm, which is described here between dicotyledone and monocotyledone, has not been acceptable.
Yes. What is the reason?
Uh, so the position means that is not acceptable.
Okay. So according to the characteristics of gymnospermae, do not come in between dicotyledone and monocotyledone. Either they should be placed separately or before dicotyledone. Because
Yes.
evolutionary trend is suggesting that characteristics of certain gymnosperms like Netum, they are similar to dicot. So there is another thought that from gymnosperms like Netum, the angiosperms might have evolved.
Yes.
And even the characteristic features of flowers of gymnosperm do not confirm that the position of gymnosperm should be between dicot and monocot. Okay, so somewhere there has to be amalgamation of these different theories together, So we cannot rule out only natural system or only phylogenetic system is good for a classification. And that is why world over now they are moving towards a new system of classification altogether, that is AGP system of classification. And we are still following the Bentham and Hooker system. Yes, there is no doubt it is one of the wonderful
Widely
system of
accepted.
classification. Yes. Thank you very much. Very good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rani.
Thank
Sir,
you, ma'am.
should we take our next
Yes,
participant?
madam. I think that Preet Karkera was she were ready. She said 5 minutes. No,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
You are
sir.
ready, Vinita?
Vinita.
Yes.
Just a moment.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunita Karkera, and my topic for today is a plant tumor of bacterial origin, that is crown gall disease, by Irwin F. Smith and C.O. Thompson. The number of crown gall known to people were few. The reason for the gall formation was undetermined. When the researchers discovered a new gall of undoubted bacterial origin, it sparked interest among plant pathologists and animal pathologists. For 2 years, the researchers have been studying naturally occurring tumor on Marguerite or Paris teeth. It became difficult for the researchers to isolate and demonstrate it in stained sections, but the bacteria seen in small number in the unstained tissues on the start were plated successfully. The inoculations were made up by needle pricks. In subcultures with 4-plate colonies, the galls reproduced abundantly and repeatedly for a few months. More than 300 galls were produced by puncture inoculation. The swellings began to be visible during favorable conditions for 4 to 5 days and were well developed in a month. In some of the experiments, 100% of the inoculations gave positive results. That is 40 punches out of 40 punches in one series and 62 out of 62 in another. Old tissues are not very susceptible. In young fleshy organs, the tumor grows rapidly. The organism attacks shoots and roots and shows abnormal growth on the wounded plants, parts of young plants. Hyperplasia, that is increase in the size of the tissue or organ due to increased number of cells, is seen not only in Marguerite. Well-developed small galls were also produced in a few weeks on the stems of tobacco, tomato, potato, and on the roots of sugar beets. The researchers were shocked to note the fact that galls closely resembling the young stage of crown gall were produced on the roots of peach tree by needle pricks. In 18 days, the growth reached the size of small trees. Matured daisy galls also looked like peach trees. After this observation, the writers performed a series of experiments in the course of next 3 months. The results of the best experiments performed on peach roots were as follows. 14 groups of needle punctures, that is 5 in each group, were made on 9 trees that resulted in 13 tumors. In another series, 9 peach trees were inoculated and 75% had yielded galls. The roots were inoculated by needle pricks, but the plants were set out again. The inoculated and uninoculated plants were set immediately after making needle punctures in good greenhouse soil, new 10-inch pots, and were subjected to the same condition as to light, heat, and water. The writers thought that the crown gall disease is due to a Lignumycete,
but they never admitted it because the inoculation experiment described by Professor Toon did not establish such facts. The facts remain well established, however, by experiments of various persons. For example, Thaxter, Halstead, Shelby, etc., that when minced balls are buried near the roots of trees, they develop spores. The name Bacterium tumeficens was proposed for the organism causing these tumors. It is a physiomycete, that is, a class of unicellular or non-cellular microorganisms that lack chlorophyll, that lack true chlorophyll, and are now usually grouped with a cyanobacteria. They cause rapid multiplication of young tissues of plants like chrysanthemums, etc. The result being production of balls. These organisms are motile, especially in young cultures. They are non-gas forming and aerobic with all the sugar and alcohol stripes. It is wide on standard nutrient agar and in patronized bouillon. It is inclined to be viscid, that is sticky or slimy on agar after 3 days. The colonies found on the surface of agar are small, round, smooth, and rather dense. In younger agar streak, it is medium-sized, short rod with rounded ends, often in pairs with plain constriction. It is rather short-lived on agar. It does not grow on cone solution and never infects olive shoots. They were also slight indication of metastasis. Conclusion. This paper was released in 1907. Though the experiment failed in some cases, the organism was later identified to be a schizomycete rather than a myxomycete. The organism occurred principally at the bottom of the tumor rather than uniformly distributed. Bacterium tumeficans is the causal agent of crown gall disease in over 140 species of plants. Thank you.
Yes. Very good. President.
Very good. Nice.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
So this is the original paper about Bacillus thuringiensis, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Very good. Ma'am, we can have the next.
Okay, sir. Vinay Kumar.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now you can, I'll just make you co-host and you can start your presentation. Vinay Kumar, I have made you co-host. You can share your screen with us.
मैम स्लाइड दिख रहा है?
नहीं दिख रहा है.
हेलो,
नहीं दिख रहा है.
No, it's not visible.
हेलो,
हाँ, हेलो, बोलो.
स्क्रीन मैम दिख रहा है अभी?
स्क्रीन दिख रहा है.
हेलो,
स्क्रीन दिख रहा है. हाँ, we can see your screen now.
सर मैं स्टार्ट करूं अभी?
हाँ, शुरू कर.
Okay, thank you. So, good morning everyone. myself Vinay Kumar from TY Botany, and I am going to present today's uh, topic. The topic of my today's presentation is the effect of toxic doses of copper upon respiration and photosynthesis. Due to that, the overall growth of Chlorella vulgaris. The paper originally published by David C.H. McBrien and Kenneth A. Hussel. So they designed three sets of experiment in order to know, or we can say check the how uh, copper affect the growth, overall growth of the Chlorella vulgaris by metabolically uh, hindering the photosynthesis and respiration. So in the first set of in their experiment, they designed uh, they taken the sample cultured, and they added uh, copper, and they performed the experiment in the Warburg apparatus, which is a kind of apparatus enclosed in that, and they in they perform uh, different different sets in order to get the result. In first, they have seen that the the rate of the respiration and the photosynthesis. They found that the first you can see here in the graph from upper side, the first indicate in the circle is open circle and in solid circles. Open circle represent the uh, condition of respiration, and dotted circle solid dots represent the rate of the photosynthesis. uh, First, when they applied the copper, they found that op- uh, the rate of the photosynthesis was very much hindered by the copper as compared to rate of the respiration. And uh, as the they treated this culture of Chlorella vulgaris in the copper sulfate, they have seen that at the certain after the certain time, they were found that the rate of the respiration become not change after the addition of uh, as they uh, as they increases the amount of copper, the rate of the respiration goes not further down. And in the last one, you can see that in anaerobic condition, the uh, rate of the photosynthesis goes tremendously down. No, now I'm going to the second set of experiment they explained uh, in their experiment. Uh, in the first set, they used very small amount of copper sulfate, so it gives this little different result. But in second set of their experiment, they have found that the rate in order to confirm that, they designed a second set of experiment. They have found that the rate of the uh, uh, aerobic and anaerobic condition was uh, in aerobic condition, the rate of the photosynthesis and respiration both are not much influenced by the copper. Due to the reason behind this, the sulfidal groups which available in the anaerobic conditions, which are binding site of the copper, are much more available in the anaerobic condition. By the second set, they have confirmed this. In their final set of the experiment, they designed set two different sets, in which first they treated the copper first period they treated with the uh, different they prepared different tubes, they added copper and they treated it. And then they provide different condition. In first A and B, they provide aerobic condition, and C and D, they provide anaerobic condition. E and F was without any copper. So after 2 hours of incubation, or we can say after 2 hours, they washed it and free the solution from copper. And the second set, in after next 2 hours, they have found that those are treated with in aerobic condition, um, are not much. They respire much, and those are treated with copper in anaerobic condition. I have found that the respiration rate is very zero, and the copper absorption is in microgram is maximum as compared to aerobic condition in anaerobic condition. And the final conclusion was that the you can see batch in sample B, the aerobic, in first 2 hours they have treated this with aerobic condition, and they uh, treated it in aerobic condition. But in this they have found that the copper is absorbed. uh, it is a short term effect when they re it was exceptionally, we can say that uh, after after the rate of the respiration was hindered by the copper, and further they found that it was short term effect, and after those few cells, those are survived due to the copper toxicity, have the potential to respire and to do photosynthesis. And the final conclusion is that it is clear that distinction must be drawn between the short-term effect of absorbed copper, the rate of photosynthesis and dispersion of chlorella valgularis, and the long-term effect upon the growth. Means after the treatment of copper on the chlorella vulgaris, the rate of the photosynthesis and dispersion was it depend upon the amount and the term and the time of exposure. The more the time of the exposure, more longer will be the effect. And as already I mentioned, in the second paragraph, it is apparent from table 1, the cell B, which appeared incapable of significant respiration, was capable of subsequent autotropic growth. It means that therefore there must be has been recovery ability of the cells or to respire. So the overall conclusion was the photosynthesis was more sensitive to applied copper than respiration. And when copper was applied in trace amount aerobically, it stimulated the respiration in the first phase, or we can say initial phase. Under the anaerobic condition, copper markedly reduced the rate of both and photosynthesis and the respiration. As we know, chlorella is a type of alga which belongs to class Chlorophyta, and it's having a, large most application in the food, medicine, and pharmaceutical and research. And the it was very nice experiment to it is a very much nice tool to design many such experiments. And it's the chlorella vulgaris is uh, mostly consumed in countries like Japan due to its protein rich diet, vitamins, and minerals. uh, Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vinay. Very nice.
Yes,
Very nicely
very
done.
nice. Okay. Just a question for Vinay. Vinay, copper is a heavy metal.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In TYBSC, maybe you have the concept called LD50. Are you aware of this?
No, sir, still not.
Okay. LD stands for lethal dose. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you can subject the organism. Say, for example,
Yes,
here
sir.
it is chlorella. or any particular plant or
Yes, sir.
animal
Yes.
to a particular dosage of heavy metals, and then you can decide which dose is lethal. Okay, so
Yes,
up
sir.
to a particular level, the organisms can adjust themselves. Like in your
Yes.
observation in this paper, it is said that
Yes.
minute quantities, the rate of respiration is still maintained, but the rate of photosynthesis is reduced. Okay, so in minute concentrations they try to adjust. Now it's a characteristic
Yes.
of all living organism, but then there
Yes.
would be a
Yes.
particular dose where they would be able to adjust, and then they would fail. Okay, so
Yes.
very good.
Yes.
Keep it up. All the best.
Yes, sir. I want to add something more.
Yes.
They have also seen that in all heavy metal, the copper was most strongly toxicant. We can say,
Mm-hmm.
which hinder and which we can say hinder the growth of
Okay.
that organism.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So can we have our next participant? Anil sir, should I take the next participant?
Yes, madam. Yes, ma'am. Please.
Okay. Next is Sakshi Tripathi.
Yes, ma'am.
Sakshi, I'll make you co-host and then you can share your presentation.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Is the screen?
Yes, the show screen is visible. Yeah, screen is visible, Sakshi. Your voice is breaking.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, Sakshi, just be a bit louder.
Okay, ma'am. Sure. Greetings to everyone.
Sakshi, your voice is breaking. We cannot hear you.
Um,
Just make the adjustment with the mic. That's all.
okay. Uh,
You may plug out and you can plug in again. That will help.
hello.
Yeah. Now it's clear.
Okay, thank you so much. Greetings to everyone present in the Zoom call. This is Sakshi Tripathi from TYBSC Zoology. The title of the experiment is independent functions of viral protein and nucleic acid in the growth of bacteriophage by A.D. Hershey and Martha Chase. This paper was published in the year 1952. The main aim of the experiment was to find out which is the genetic material. Is it protein or DNA? I have put up the first page of the original paper for your reference. So this is what I'll be talking about. This is my seminar outline: introduction, material methods, followed by result and discussions, then conclusion and references. Introduction. The work of Doberman and co-workers suggested that bacteriophages T2, T3, and T4 multiply in the bacterial cell in the non-effective form. Same was true for the phage carried by certain lysogenic bacteria also. However, very less information was available about the vegetative phase of the virus. So Hershey and Chase performed an experiment during which in the first initial steps in the growth of T2, protein coat was released, after which it was concluded that the sulfur-containing protein has no function, but the nucleic acid, that is DNA, had some function. So let us see how it was performed and what made Hershey and Chase arrive at this conclusion. These are the material methods. First, it was the chemical morphology of the resting phage particle tested. In this Hershey and Chase experiment, it was based on the idea that T2 phage consists of 50% protein and 50% DNA. It causes infection in E. coli by absorption with the bacterial cell wall.
by tail fibers, which are known as receptors. The production of the new virus occurred within the bacterial cells. So Hershey and Chase used radioisotopes 32P and 35S. They grew bacteriophages in the two different medium. Out of these, one medium was having 32P as a source of phosphorus, and 32P gets incorporated in DNA of the progeny virus, and protein contains sulfur, so 35S becomes the part of protein. Next slide. E. coli bacteria was mixed with the label phage particles. Then phages were allowed to infect the bacteria. During the infection, phage attached to the bacterial surface and inject the DNA inside the bacteria. After the infection, the protein coat remained attached to the bacterial surface. So a blender was used to separate the attached phage coats from the bacterial cells, after which the mixture was centrifuged to separate bacteriophage and phage coats. Due to the centrifugation, bacterial cells, as you can see, got settled at the bottom of the centrifuge, that is the sediment part, and empty phage coats were attached to the supernatant part. Now, as you can see in the image, the radioactivity detection was done. So in the tube containing P32 labeled bacteriophage, radioactivity was detected in the sediment part and was completely absent in the supernatant part, whereas in the tube containing 35S labeled phages, radioactivity was detected in the supernatant but absent in sediment. This proved that the DNA enters from phages to bacteria and helps in the synthesis of new phages, whereas the protein coat of the phage remains outside during the infection. This proved that DNA was the genetic material of the life responsible for hereditary, and sulfur containing protein had no function, but some of the question remained unanswered. That does any sulfur-free bacteria other than DNA enter the cell, or is it was transferred directly or indirectly? Further, Watson and Crick suggested that the genetic material is DNA and is responsible for the synthesis of thousands of protein found in cells. Conclusion were arrived that Hershey and Chase experiment is also known as blender experiment. We studied this experiment in the SY in the semester third. They proved that the phage DNA was responsible for replication of phage in the host bacteria, thus concluding that DNA is the genetic material. However, when I was doing some research, I came to know that that Avery, McLeod, and McCarthy experiment was performed in 1944, and they concluded that DNA was the genetic material and not protein. But there was some unwillingness in the scientific community, and they left it to Hershey and Chase to confirm that. I also came to know that Alfred Hershey was awarded Nobel Prize for the experiment and their co-workers, but Martha Chase was ignored. She was the assistant researcher, but she must have been recognized for this. So these are my references. I got this material from internet, and thank you for patiently hearing me. Back to
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. It was very nice.
Yes, Sakshi, very well done. Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
I think, ma'am, there are no other
There is one more.
participants.
Mohammad Irshad is there, I think.
But has he
Last
joined?
participant, Mohammad Irshad.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there. Very
Yeah,
good.
he is there. So I think Mohammad, I'll make you co-host now, and you can Irshad, you can start your presentation.
Irshad.
Irshad, yes. Irshad, I'm making you co-host so you can share your presentation. And just before you present, just all request to all the participants, your paper title has to be correct. So please check the main list for your paper title, the list which has been shared with you. If any correction is there, please let us know so that we can modify it. And even your name, just check your name is proper or not, because that name will be there on the certificate. Okay, Irshad, you can start your.
Good morning to one and all. I'm Muhammad Irshad Khan from SYBSC C Division. My roll number is 621. Today, I will tell you the most beautiful experiment in biology, the replication of DNA in Escherichia coli by Dr. Matthew Michelson and Franklin W. Starr, which was performed in the year 1958. We all know from previous experiments that DNA is a genetic material and it replicates to pass on its information to the next generation. But we don't know the nature of the DNA replication until Michelson and Stahl perform its experiments using Escherichia coli. I've put up the first page of its original paper from that experiment for your references, as you can see in here. Now, what they have done is they've taken E. coli and culture it in a heavy nitrogen medium, that is N15, which is also called as radioactive nitrogen. They culture it for several generations so that the DNA is fully intact, fully tagged with a heavy nitrogen. Then they take the sample from that medium and centrifuged it. For centrifugation, they have used density gradient centrifugation. In this centrifugation, the heavy material settles at the bottom and the light materials came out on top. Oh, sorry. I think I have missed. Yeah, now I continue. The light material came out on top. So they took the sample from a heavy nitrogen medium and centrifuged it. After centrifugation for 24 hours, they took the UV image, and what they observed is a band in a heavy region in density gradient, cesium chloride density gradient centrifugation. Then they transfer these heavy nitrogen containing E. coli into light nitrogen medium, that is N14 normal nitrogen, and they allow it to culture for one generation. After the first generation, they again taken the sample, removed the DNA and centrifuged it. They have taken the UV image after centrifugation. What they observe is the two bands, one in heavy region and the other in somewhere above heavy region. After that, they allow the E. coli to culture it for several generations. They allow E. coli to culture it for several generations. What's going on?
Irshad, you can close your background programs.
Yeah, ma'am, it's a concept.
वो गायब हो गया मैप। वो शायद उसने नेट ही बंद कर दिया।
नेट बंद कर दिया, yes.
हाँ।
He is the last participant, sir.
Yeah. No
Anybody,
problem.
everybody is done otherwise.
If he comes, then we'll give him chance. He has come.
He has come. I'll make him co-host again.
Correct.
Irshad.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can start. No problem.
Proceed.
So I'm in density gradient centrifugation. After several generations of a E. coli culture, they again took the sample from that medium and they again centrifuged it for 24 hours. After taking the UV image, what they observed is the three bands, one in heavy region, one in light region, and one in between them. as you can see in here, the first image shows banding of DNA of E. coli from heavy nitrogen. The second image shows the light nitrogen and heavy nitrogen band, and the graph shows its distribution in the cesium chloride density gradient. The third image shows us the the growth of a heavy nitrogen and light nitrogen medium in cesium in density gradient centrifugation. And the fourth image shows us different types of bands we have seen in many generations. And before going further, I would like you all to know that at that time there were three models of DNA replication were proposed. First one was the conservative model, where the DNA is fully conserved and a new DNA is found. The second was the semi-conservative model, where every parent DNA strand makes a new daughter DNA strand. And the third one is the dispersive model, where the parent DNA and the daughter DNA were distributed equally in every strand. So what they have concluded that from the second peak, they have concluded that it can't be dispersive, because in dispersive medium, in dispersive replication, every strand should be of equal weight. So it can't be dispersive. And from what have also concluded that it can be conservative, as for conservative there should be only two bands, that is for one parental DNA and one for daughter DNA. So what they have concluded that the replication of DNA is semi-conservative, as each DNA strand forms a new DNA strand. As you can see in here, that after several generations, the DNA strands get it. After several generations, the heavy nitrogen gets lower and the light nitrogen gets upper. You can see in here that is this is 1/1, this is 1/2, this is 1/4, and this is 1/8 in the ratio. So they have concluded that the DNA is a semi-conservative model, but they have also came up with several questions which they haven't got the answer, like what are the molecule structure of subunits of E. coli DNA which are passed on intact to each daughter molecules, and also several questions like that. The difference between what I have learned and the original paper, I've learned this experiment in my previous classes, but it has given me a clear idea on this after studying this paper, that it is interesting to know that they have used a density gradient centrifugation method to know the replication of DNA. Also, Messelson is graduated from chemistry, and Alstal graduated from biology, and they have came together in partnership to perform these experiments and do so the experiment. And these are the references point which I have used for your references. And at the end, I would like to thank you all for being a patient ear to me, and also letting me speak, giving me the opportunity to speak in here. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Irshad. It was good presentation. Nice.
Yes, very nice. Now, sir, I
Yeah.
think we have finished all the presentations.
yes,
Only one
correct.
request to all the participants: please check your name, your paper title from the list which was shared with you on the group. So, if there is any change, let us know. Okay.
Madam, if you have that list with you, you can share it
Yes,
on the
yes. I think I
screen
will do that,
so
sir.
that they
I will
can,
share the list.
and we can rectify there itself.
And we will have a group photo now after I share the list. Ours is room number 6. Yes, it's here. Just a moment. I'll just share the screen. Yeah. Jyoti, just check out. Vinita, Lakshmi, Ankita. Ankita, your title, I think I'll take it from that inaugural session.
Okay, ma'am.
Rani, your title is Bentham and Hooker.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Vinay Kumar,
Yeah,
correct
make it
title.
Rani, at least make it Bentham and Hooker's system of classification.
Yes, system of classification. Yeah, I was saying that.
Okay, so I'll change it to plus system of classification.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll just add it in my. Okay, I'll do the correction.
So out of 14, how many are presented?
Sir, how 8 have presented,
8.
sir.
Okay. Yeah, I have.
Sakshi Tripathi, name and title, everything is correct. Your class is correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Irshad,
या मैम बट वन थिंग है मैथ्यू के पहले ना मैम डॉक्टर रहेगा डॉक्टर मैथ्यू मिसेल्सन
अरे वो ऐसे ही आता है पेपर का टाइटल
पेपर में नहीं आता बेटा पेपर में डॉक्टर
पेपर
वगैरह
में
कुछ
डॉक्टर नहीं आता है
इनफैक्ट पेपर होने के बाद डॉक्टर बनता है
ओके ओके
सो एवरीथिंग फाइन विद ऑल राइट
नहीं और डॉक्टर रहेगा तो भी वो पेपर में नहीं लिखते
पेपर में कभी नहीं लिखते हैं ओके सो I'll stop share now. So can we have a group photo?
Yeah, sure. But I don't have camera actually.
No, I have got. I'll take a screenshot.
Screenshot.
Participants, if you can all show your face on the video. So we'll take a screenshot of all the participants. Just a moment. One minute. Anil sir.
Yes, ma'am.
हे सगळे पार्टिसिपेंट एकत्र दिसायला काय करायला लागतं
that list है ना कुछ तो participants list वगैरह कुछ रहेगा शायद even I am not aware
something because everybody should come. Okay, I'll start taking screenshots. Okay. Smile, everyone. Okay, so we are done with our session today.
Thank you, ma'am.
So it was indeed very nice. All the participants, you have done a very good job. Wonderfully presented papers. We were not expecting so much, but your enthusiasm and the way you have learned from this classic paper, we are really very happy. Sir, I'll request you to give your opinion on this presentation.
First of all, I would like to congratulate the person who has come out with this unique idea of reproducing those particular papers in students' mind. And see, what happens nowadays, like students refer to any particular internet site and then they quote. But I always believe that even internet, even Google may go wrong many times. So it is always a good habit of referring back to the original papers and especially the reference books. So the whole idea of this exercise is a wonderful idea, and I hope this will continue. And I can really make out some students have done really good presentations, and I wish it is a very good beginning for them. And in the years to come, they will go much beyond this, and they'll present their original papers as well.
Yes, really, really
So
nice, sir.
I'm really happy for all the students who have presented. Wish them all the best. And thank you, Janvi madam, for giving me this opportunity to judge this particular event. In
Sir,
fact,
it was
in fact,
pleasure to have you
yeah,
actually.
in fact, I've learned a lot from this whole exercise as well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. This unique idea, Kiran sir came up with this unique idea of paper, classic paper
Acha,
presentation.
great.
So, sir, thank you very
Yeah,
much
ma'am. Thank you.
for giving your time on Sunday.
Absolutely.
For the students, thanks a lot. Okay, so
Okay.
thank you all the students.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am, I need to compile that list and send it to you.
Yes, sir. You can just give me your marks and give it to. You can share it with me. I'll make the result.
Okay.
Final result.
Sure.
Thank you,
Yeah,
ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you,
good
bye.
day.
Bye, ma'am. Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.
Have a nice day.
Yes. Same to you.